rather short introduction to publishing and portfolios. Now, to start off with, we have to get into what it means to do like publishing and portfolios. Now, publishing refers particularly to like you getting your games to your players. So typically, that's you putting your games on the market in some way, or just in general, just sending even to players directly if need be, and also spreading awareness of your game. Now, in contrast, portfolio. Great. Okay. Portfolios, in contrast, are collections of your games. So typically, that will be some of your published games, or even a few unpublished if need be, and you'll show those to potential employers, publishers, and players. Now, to start off with publishing, you will first need to select your platform. Now, when selecting them, there's a wide variety. However, I picked two in particular to discuss mainly, which are itch.io and Steam. Now, itch.io, which some of you may have a little bit of familiarity with right now, is completely free to publish on, and there is 0% cut by itch.io of your profits. So you don't really need to worry about losing any of your money on there. However, it does come with the caveat that it is a decently smaller market, as it's particularly mainly used by indie developers. Though that also does mean your competition isn't quite as bad, considering you aren't competing with like Dice, EA, or whatever. Now, as for Steam, that is like the main PC platform for games. In fact, some gamers out there will not even play a game if it's not on Steam. So it is a very large market to get on, and there are typically higher revenue like from sales and marketing on there. However, you do need to pay $100 to get your game on there, and you will lose 30% of your revenue with each time your game is sold. So it's not entirely the best for indie developers due to that reason, but if you want your game to make money, that is typically the better way to go. In addition, there are several other platforms such as IndieDB, which is similar to itch.io, but unlike itch, it's a little smaller in terms of its market and is especially mainly used by indie developers and more of a community rather for indie developers to meet up, but it does have publishing options. There's the Epic Games Store, which is at least trying to be a competitor to Steam. So you also have to pay $100 to get on there, though they take a smaller cut of only 12%. So still a bit worse than itch.io in that regard, but there is also a slightly bigger market to some degree potentially. And they also do a lot of sales on there with their games, which get a lot of people playing them. And then you also have Humble Bundle and GOG, which I'm kind of mentioning together as they're two smaller platforms not used as much by the developers. But Humble Bundle is used a bit more when you're selling games for charity, and GOG is at least somewhat a competitor to Steam. At least it sells Steam games usually for less, and it will sometimes publish indie developer games. But unlike the other ones, there's a decent review process of games before publishing, so there is a decent chance your game just does not get released on there. And then lastly, as has been mentioned a little bit on the Discord before, is Roblox, which is very insulated as a platform to publish on since you can only use the Roblox game engine. You get paid not in money but in Robux. So you have to very much plan that out if you do plan to use that. Now, next up, if you choose your platform, you have to actually set up your game page. Now, the first part will have to be your description, which will be a small, like a little bit about the basic gameplay mainly, and only like a little bit of your plot. You mainly want to focus on the gameplay, as the plot that you write in the description probably won't be what actually gets players interested in your game, since there's only so much you can really reel them in with that with just the basic description. Now, next up, you'll have your screenshots. So you'll want at least three, preferably more, and you'll want to be showing a variety of parts of your game. For instance, in the one you see on the right of this page, you can see that's what we did for Cartomancy, our game from last Game Jam, where our screenshots include a variety of missions, so you can see the different environments and a little bit of the different gameplay. So that's just meant to show players the different type of content they'll be getting, and also give a better idea of how much time they may be spending on the game, so it doesn't all look like it just came from the same mission or like a few minutes. Now, lastly, something that you should be careful not to dismiss is the general style of your game page, particularly in terms of like the background and the font. Not all platforms will let you customize this, but at least itch.io will. And you can do this to try and help set your game apart from the other ones on there by showing how much time and effort you put into your game page. And you can also make it match your game more, which can typically lead to better engagement from players. So Next, once you've actually published your game on one of those platforms, you'll need to actually find a way to spread awareness of your game. So the first common way to do that is to make trailers. Usually you want them to be like 1 or 2 minutes, mainly showing the unique gameplay of your game and some of the plot. You don't want to go beyond like this little threshold, mainly because at that point you'll end up with a lot of people just kind of clicking off your trailer since there's only so much you can really get their attention longer than that. Now, you'll also want to focus more on the game rather than yourself, or if you do have one, your publisher, because you as an indie dev will probably not have as much of a sway in terms of like the larger like gaming community. So chances are anything you put in as a reference to yourself or your publisher won't really be paid much attention by viewers. It's better start using that time for your game itself. And it should be noted, the trailer by itself will probably not bring players in. If you just put that on YouTube, it'll suffer the same issue as the game page, where it's just getting passive engagement from whatever like shows up in people's search algorithms. Which leads to the next thing, which is advertising, which, as we all may not like and especially don't want to pay for it usually, it is probably one of the best effective ways to get people to play your games. Now, there are a variety of ways to do that. You can just go to some platforms like Reddit, for instance, and advertise on there usually. And you can do that with that trailer I mentioned before, or just like some screenshots and a little bit of description of your game. But either way, it tends to be a bit better to do that. But if you don't have the money or just simply don't want to pay for advertisements, you have the last option of going to forums to advertise your game that way. So several indie dev forums, as well as some genre-specific forums, will allow devs to announce their own games on there to gather players. Particularly for genre-specific ones, that may be a better approach, as a lot of those forums just don't get as many games in general from certain publishers. As such, they'll be a bit more interested in whatever indie games advertise on there, and you might not have as much competition as you would otherwise. So besides publishing, a little bit for portfolios is that usually that will be some sort of website with all or a select few of your games, and that will usually just be to showcase to publishers, employers, and players. Now, these can also be profiles on publishing platforms, though I'll be focusing a bit more on doing websites. So I have below here some of the website options you can go with, particularly Weebly, GoDaddy, Squarespace, and Adobe Portfolio, which is not quite a website thing, but similar enough for this. Now, for the first three, those all can be free if you just do the subdomain option. And for Adobe Portfolio, as you are presumably all Clemson students, you are given an Adobe Creative Cloud account, so you can go ahead and do that yourself as well. Oh, yeah, Wix can definitely be a good one to do if you're able to. Yeah, I think Google Sites also works. These are just the ones I knew of, like off the top of my head, that were like free to do subdomains at least, which is still the option you'll see on any website creator where it may cost money to do your own with like your own domain, but if you just do their own subdomain, that's pretty much free. Now, I also have a few options of some portfolios I'd like to show you what you can go with. And if you watch any indie devs on YouTube, you may recognize some of these people, as they're some of the more popular ones. At least the first two, Donnie kind of stopped uploading like a year ago, so not so much anymore. Now I can show you these examples. So to start off with, there's Blackthorn Prod, which is one of the more, I'd say, like well set up sites. It just takes a second to load. So you'll see this one has a lot of work put into it, and they also publish like parts of like their videos and tutorials on here. But then when I scroll down to here, you can go see all their games. And in this case, they actually go with the profile option for the games in particular, where it goes right to their itch.io. Now, next up, a simpler option you can go with, which was made in the Adobe portfolio option, is Jonas Tyroller, where they just have a simple web page where you can see all their games on here. It links to them, actually, oh, it links to it on their website as well, with a little bit of a trailer, some basic information about their game. So that's just a basic way to do your portfolio. And usually you will also want some like an about me and a contact information page. And then lastly is one of the even simpler options to probably go with is Donnie's website, where It just has a few that link to his games on itch.io. And again, you still want that contact page if you can. All right. So that's pretty much it for this presentation. As I said, it's rather short. It was just to give a brief introduction to how you get into publishing and making portfolios. Now, are there any questions? Um, are we just going by itch.io or my website? Itch.io, I'd say 7 at least. I haven't checked in a while. The website, I have no clue anymore. Anything else? All right. So now we can use the rest of this time for our game jam stuff, and I'll go ahead and end the recording here since that's probably not going to be used for anyone anymore.